Thank you very much, Janie. Gosh, you know how daunting it is to be the last one on at a conference? Imagine how more daunted I feel following Susie's fantastic presentation on impactful presentations. Now I'm really worried. Thanks, Susie. I'm genuinely delighted to be here because I really am passionate about the diversity and inclusion agenda, and particularly the gender agenda. And I think it's important in terms of understanding where we are on the journey around the gender agenda to take a little look back in history to get some context. So 55 million years ago, they have recently discovered, you will know from the news, a small primate that they think was the beginning of human life. It's one of our earliest ancestors, 55 million years ago. Don't worry, I'm going to pick up the pace a bit. Because 85,000 years ago, you see, I'm taking big leaps in time here. You're not going to be here till Sunday. 85,000 years ago, man left the savannah for the first time. And man started to populate different parts of the world. And man started to evolve. And in that time, the attributes that were most typical of men, strength, speed, stamina, agility, were what actually kept mankind alive. Their single-minded focus on when the next antelope was coming from to eat, for them to kill and eat, was what kept everybody alive. Women, in the meantime, were fulfilling very important roles. They were nurturing, they were raising children, they were gathering rather than hunting. They were looking out for one another, they were making connections. All very important, but it wasn't going to help the human race survive. So for tens of thousands of years, those attributes that men have of strength and stamina, agility, and so on, were absolutely paramount. And they became paramount in the workplace. Because the workplace comprised farming, mining, metal bashing, physical activities that were more inclined to the male attributes than the female attributes. 250 years ago, something happened that started to level the playing field for women. Has anybody got any idea what that was? Yes, thank you, the Industrial Revolution, where machinery and technology started to replace the need for human strength and stamina. We started to level the playing field for women in the workplace. All should be well, one would think, because that was 250 years ago. Surely we've come a long way since then. Wrong. Because we had tens of thousands of years of men good, women bad, or slightly less good. And so society had this expectation of roles. Society valued men and women differently. If you think it was less than 100 years ago, women in the UK won the right to self-determination. We won the vote less than 100 years ago. My God, we've got some catching up to do. We really have got some catching up to do, and that's one of the reasons why I am so passionate about this agenda. Now, I am a partner in Ernst Young, which is a very fine firm of accountants, and because of that, I'm going to share some numbers with you. The first number I'm going to share with you is 2.1. This number was first presented to me by an academic, a professor from an American business school, and he said, this is the most important number since pi. I thought, my goodness, that's a very lofty aspiration for this number. I have no idea what this number is, and you're telling me that it is that important. He said, this is the number of children that every woman should have in order for a population to replenish itself and renew itself. I go, yeah, okay, I get that. One for her, one for him, 0.1 for infant mortality. I get that. So what? Well, the so what is that the only mature economy that is close to that number is the US, and they're at 2 and declining. Italy and Spain are at 1.2. The UK is at 1.6. China is at 1.4, which is somewhat surprising given their single-child policy. And the issue that that presents is that we are in an aging population. So the available talent in the workplace, to bring into the workplace, is diminishing. And the people out of the workplace who have retired and are dependent upon the activities of the people in the workplace is increasing. This is a problem. This is an economic time bomb that is going to go off unless we do something about it. And I don't mean go out and breed, although that would be helpful. But that really isn't the point. The point is, for organizations, if we continue to hire in our own image, or as we've historically always hired, if we do not hire through a diversity lens, if we do not create an environment where everybody, regardless of gender or background, ethnicity, sexual orientation, has the opportunity to succeed, our organizations will not grow. Because the talent within our country borders is just not there. It's a diminishing pool. The populations that are growing are India, 2.3, Indonesia, Vietnam, the Philippines, Mexico. So immigration for the UK, as we languish at 1.6, is going to be really important for us. And the inclusion aspect of diversity is really important. And for goodness sake, why would you then exacerbate this problem by only hiring men into your organization? Of course, you've got to create opportunity for women. Some of you, I believe we didn't have quite enough copies, but some of you will have in your bags some research that we have commissioned recently and published recently, which talks about women as the third emerging market. And there's some interesting stats in there, and this is one of them. 25% of global wealth, which is in the gazillion trillions, is controlled by women. 25% of the global wealth today is controlled by women. 80% of the buying decisions made globally are made by women. 80%. Now, there's a lot of B2C activity in there, of mothers and wives globally making buying decisions to put food on the table, etc. But this is incredibly impactful, even in the B2B environment that I operate in. Our clients are changing. I see more and more women in our clients at senior level, at influential level, who are making buying decisions on which organizations they want to work with. We have to start to look like our buyers. Otherwise, we're going to miss a trick. And 80% is a huge number. And finally, 2014. By the end of next year, the global wealth that will be controlled by women will be bigger than the combined GDP of China and India. So our research, copies of which you hopefully will have, says that today women are the third emerging market. By the end of next year, we will be the first. This is a great story for us and a great opportunity. So I want to talk a little bit about, everyone having a role to play in all of this. And we've got to start with ourselves. Governments can do their bit. Governments have done quite a lot. I mean, for us in the UK, our government has done quite a lot to enact non-discrimination legislation, the Equal Pay Act, back in 1970-something, the Equal Pay Act. Apparently, if we carry on the same trajectory as we're on at the moment, it'll be 2045 until we actually get parity on pay. But anyway, that's another story. But governments have some role to play. Organizations have a role to play in terms of policies, procedures, etc. Our male colleagues have roles to play. But fundamentally, it's got to be down to us. We have to be able to dig deep into ourselves to figure out what it is that we are going to bring to the party that is going to move the dial on this agenda, and how can we influence those around us. When I was preparing for today, I reflected on my career journey, and I think my career is very much like a climbing wall rather than a sort of straight-up ladder. And there are times when I've gone sideways on my climbing wall. And there was one moment in time in particular where I kind of plateaued and I was stuck. I couldn't see where the next handhold or foothold was. I created a barrier for myself. And that occurred in my early 30s when I was tapped on the shoulder by my boss and said, we've put you on partner track. And at the time, I had no concept that being a partner in the firm was something that I was even capable of doing. And I said, well, what does this mean, partner track? He said, well, we want to send you off on this assessment a couple of days. It's down in Brighton. Pop along, nothing to prepare, you'll be fine. Needless to say, I wasn't fine. I was like the furthest from being fine I could possibly have been. I had a catastrophic 2 days, probably the worst 2 days of my now 30-year career. And to say I crashed and burned would be polite. So I had to dig really deep at that point in time into myself because I was starting to challenge all sorts of things about me personally. I was also starting to challenge whether or not I was in the right organization. What was going to happen to my career now? I'd had this catastrophic event. And over a period of 6 to 9 months, I reached out to my networks, and those were networks within the firm as well as my personal networks. And little by little, I got help to kind of put myself back together again and to pick myself up and carry on. And I've learned a huge amount about myself from that experience. They do say that you learn more from your setbacks than your successes, and that's certainly the case for me, but my goodness, you have to be prepared to dig deep. And the networks thing, I think, is really critical. Because being prepared to reach out for help can sometimes feel quite scary, but it's really necessary. But if you're going to reach out and ask for help, you've also got to be prepared to give help. And Susie said, it's often very effective to use quotations from people, and I'll quote Madeleine Albright, who said there's a special place in hell reserved for women who do not help other women. So that is my caution to you. Ask for help, reach out to your networks, but also be prepared to give help and provide support when asked. And this is difficult stuff. This really is difficult stuff because life isn't plain sailing, let alone life in the workplace is not plain sailing. And confidence is absolutely key. I love this cartoon, not least because I've got 2 miniature schnauzers, and one of them behaves like this every day. I can see her in her basket first thing in the morning, and today I am going to be magnificent. And she is. So I get a real warm feeling when I look at this cartoon, but it also reminds me that there's so much that I can draw upon in terms of resource internally. And Susie mentioned, I think it was the word massive, and that massive just changed her physicality. I think this, magnificent. Whenever I say to myself, if I'm feeling nervous about something, I say, today I am going to be magnificent, and my shoulders go back and my spine straightens, and it's such a wonderful word, and it gives me a huge amount of confidence. And there's a lot around self-belief, and I'm sure you will have read and been coached on self-belief and women and self-belief, and what's the issue with women and self-belief? Well, we do suffer from a lack of self-belief from time to time. And that inner strength and that inner sense that you've got to dig deep and find that confidence, find that way to deny those demons that are in your head that are limiting you, when I was preparing for today, for the last couple of weeks, every now and again I've been waking up at 3:30 in the morning in a panic, thinking, oh my God, I'm last on. I didn't even know I was following Susie. I'd have been even more panicked. I'm last on. What if there's only 3 people in the room? Thank you for being more than 3 people in the room. And what have I got to say about any of this? What if I dry up? It's going to be a complete nightmare. And what about my slides? What if nobody likes them? All those self-doubts. And I had to dig deep and figure out that Simone had asked me to come and talk to you today for a reason, that I do have something to say, that I have a compelling way of saying it, and that hopefully you will go away with some really good messages. So I felt inside much more confident. But I've also worked on my external projection of confidence. Now, I don't know whether I look confident to you standing up here. I don't feel it. And if any of you came and held my hand, you would find them freezing cold and clammy. So I wouldn't suggest you do that. It's not a nice feeling. It's not a nice feeling having them at the end of my arms. You know, I am not feeling inside 100% confident. But a couple of years ago, I had to present to 900 graduates, our graduate intake at EY, from all over the country. We were at Excel over in the Docklands. And I never presented to 900 people before. So I asked for help. And I got some fantastic training, similar to the training that Susie would offer. And this was from a lady called Sue, who's an actress and RADA trained. And what I hadn't appreciated is that RADA have a sort of a business angle to their activities, where they work with executives on presentations. And she said she allowed me to run through my suggested presentation, told me it was all rubbish. Do you have to have any slides at all? Oh, yes, I do. I need at least 30, because that's my security blanket. And she got me down to 1 in the end. I was fiercely hanging on to this final one. I can't go on stage in front of 900 people without at least 1 slide. But what she told me was, as you're coming on stage, if you're feeling nervous, you should put down a glass of water. And I don't know whether you noticed, but I came up here and I put down a glass of water. And in doing that, that movement starts to take stress out of your body. Just that simple movement. And then she said, right, I want you to stand center stage with your feet shoulder width apart. And the reason that I want you to do that is because it will give you that sense of confidence, that sense, and Susie talked about it, of owning the space. If somebody came up and shoved me, they're not going to push me over because I'm solid, I'm grounded, and I feel that confidence. If I was standing here like this and somebody came and pushed me, then I'd be tumbling off the edge of the stage. And the final thing she said to me was, take your hands out your pockets. I always wear trousers with pockets. Take your hands out of your pockets. If you have your hands in your pockets, people will think you're lying. Ooh. Really? You should see some of the blokes I work with. Anyway, I actually find that incredibly difficult. So you will notice today I am wearing trousers without pockets. So it's like just tips and techniques and planning ahead. What am I going to wear? What am I going to wear that's going to make me feel confident? And what am I going to wear that's going to stop me putting my hands in my pockets? So all really good stuff. And, but it is stuff that takes practice, and it does take mindfulness, and it does take thinking about. Somebody asked me recently, they said, do you think the outward display of confidence is more important than inner confidence? I said, oh gosh, definitely. And I said, just imagine you're going on holiday or on a business trip, and you're on a plane, and you're belted in, and the plane's pushing back from the dock to taxi out to the runway, and the captain comes on and goes, oh, hello. Oh, it's ever so crowded up here. There's kind of all these knobs and levers and lights and I think I got the hang of it. No, what would you do? You'd get off the plane, wouldn't you? And so outward display of confidence, absolutely critical. So who else have we got in play here? Well, there are many people that we need to engage with on this agenda. And I've mentioned government already once. Can I just do a quick show of hands and see just who's in favour of quotas? Oh, we've got a few. We've got a few. So I take it that the rest of you aren't. That's very, if we can capture that very few, because I was talking to Brian earlier and he said, it'll be really interesting to ask that question. I'm really in two minds about quotas. I'm in and out like a fiddler's elbow on it. Some days I think absolutely not, it's all got to be a meritocracy, etc. And other days I just go, you know, we're never moving the dial on this. And perhaps we do need quotas. Now, Norway is quite interesting. So Norway have had a quota system for some time. And I learned very recently that the listed companies in Norway that are required to have quotas, the quota system works something like this. Your board has to comprise 40% men, 40% women, and 20% whoever, which I think is a great way of approaching it, as opposed to saying, look, here are some special needs people over here. We'll just pluck 3 of them because we need to have them on the board. So maybe there is an argument for quotas, but I can certainly see that it's not a popular idea in this room at the moment. Let's see how quickly we can move the dial on this, as opposed to going backwards. But, you know, part of the problem, and this is the historical problem, right? Because we are coming late to the party in the workplace, we will all be aware and have observed poor behavior, sloppy use of language, that leave us feeling uncomfortable, to say the least. And I'll give you an example. I was chairing a partners meeting a few years ago, and it was mostly male partners, and one of them turned around to me and said, oh, now, Liz, I suppose you're going to talk to us about biodiversity. And I thought, do I just let that ride, or do I call him out on it? And I decided to call him out on it, because actually if I just let it hang there, it was undermining the importance of the message that I wanted to deliver about diversity and inclusiveness. So I said, very gently, Lee, please don't call it that. You know full well it's diversity and inclusion that I want to talk about. Biodiversity is something to do with Kew Gardens. And you using that word undermines the importance of what I want to say. That took a huge amount of courage, a huge amount of magnificence to call it out. It's really hard. And I'm not suggesting for a minute that you have to do it all on your own. But reaching out to people, to colleagues in your organization, taking people off to one side and talking to them about how the language that they're using or the behaviors that they're demonstrating are impacting you, I think is really, really important. We took about 3,000 of our EMEA partners to Euro Disney a few years ago for a conference, and we were right in the thick of the global financial crisis. Lehman Brothers had just collapsed. And we had a Swedish economist on stage talking to us, and he started to talk about diversity and whether or not, particularly gender diversity, and whether or not we would be in a different place if there had been better balanced, gender balanced boards of the banks that were all in the process of toppling over. And he was the first person I heard coin the phrase, Lehman Sisters would never have gone bust. And the male partner I was sitting next to turned and said rather snootily, Lehman Sisters would never have got off the ground. How do you think I felt? But I said to him, well, haven't you just proved the point? That balance is good. Balance would have been a better result. Women take fewer risks, so maybe Lehman Sisters would never have got off the ground. So we would have needed the men to help that. But because women take fewer risks, typically in leadership, it wouldn't have gone bust. You've proved the point. And I'm not for a moment standing up here saying men bad, women good. Not at all. Balance is what it's all about. But we do have a lot of ground to make up. And dealing with the elephants in the room is difficult. Asking questions of your bosses of why is the leadership team all white men is difficult. So reaching out for help with colleagues, particularly male colleagues, and that's why their voice is so important in this, which is why the business case is so important, is absolutely paramount. So, diversity and inclusion. Diversity, very good, very good. We like diversity. When I walk into our our office at More London Place in London, it looks like the League of Nations. It's fantastic. And you can hear 5 different languages being spoken in the lifts. It is absolutely brilliant. And our biggest risk as an organisation on this agenda is that my white male partners of my baby boomer generation go, oh, D&I done that. Look, there's loads of women, there's loads of black folk, we've even got some queers in here. I go, yes, you're talking about me, actually. You know, diversity is only as good as the inclusive behaviours that really bring diversity to life. And inclusive leadership is difficult. Because inclusive leadership means that you are encouraging, actively encouraging difference. You're actively encouraging different opinions. You're actively encouraging people to draw upon their cultural heritage, their experiences, their schooling, to put something different into the room. Putting something different into the room that enables businesses to make better decisions and enables us to serve our clients and our customers in a different and more compelling way. We undertook a survey of the Ernst Young world a few years ago, and we engaged some external consultants to help us on this, and we asked them to look at all of our businesses globally and to see if they could draw any kind of correlation between the level of engagement of our people in those businesses and the power of our brand in the market. So we had the people survey to go on in terms of measuring engagement, and we had the external brand survey that would give us a clue of what our clients felt about us in the market. And you will not be surprised to know that there was a direct correlation between the level of engagement and the power of the brand. So the higher the engagement of your people in the business, the more powerful the brand was in the market, because the clients were experiencing something different. And one of the ways that we measure engagement is, in the survey, we ask questions like, that get to the answers of, I feel able to be myself at work. I feel included and part of a team. I feel that my voice is heard and that my contribution is valued. And all of those things are right at the heart of diversity and inclusion. So if you get that right, your brand, the power of your brand, based on our research, is significantly enhanced. And then, because we're accountants, we had to say, oh yeah, whatever, so what? And the answer to so what in the Ernst Young world was when we looked at the top 10% performing businesses and compared them to the bottom 10% performing businesses, and we looked at their financial data. And the delta between the two was $100,000 per person per year difference in revenue. It is huge. So this isn't about beanbags and hot tubs. Let's be nice to the girls, let's be nice to the blacks, let's be nice to the gays. This is a business imperative. Business performance will be significantly enhanced through getting this right. And gender is only the start of it, but is obviously why we're here today. Absolutely critical. So I'm really excited about the journey that we are all on. But when you reflect back through history, you see some moments in time and you just think, oh my God, I can't believe that person said that thing out loud in public. Can I just do another quick question? How many of you in the room, men included, please, the few of you that are out there, I can see you, just, how many of you are feminists? Okay, I reckon we've probably got about 10 to 15% of the room. Yeah. Last time I asked this question at an International Women's Day event, I got about the same sort of response, including one man who stuck his hand up, which I thought was pretty brave. Feminism is a bit of an uncomfortable word and notion, I think. And in 1992, so only 21 years ago, so in our lifetime, ladies and gentlemen, There's a chap called Pat Robertson who was a TV evangelist in the States, and he was also quite active in the Republican Party and had aspirations to high office. And at a rally, he, in a speech, said the following about feminism. Feminism makes women leave their husbands, kill their children, practice witchcraft, destroy capitalism, and become lesbians. Out loud at a public rally only 21 years ago. It's hardly surprising that feminism has had a bit of a bum rap. So I'll ask you another question. How many of you believe in a woman's right to equality in the church, in the state, in society, in the workplace? If there's anybody who hasn't got their hand up, I will be coming to find you later. I think we have a full house on that. Well, that, ladies and gentlemen, is the definition of feminism. So I invite you to join me in a campaign to reclaim the word. So we've got a lot to do. If we've got people like that a mere 20 years ago saying things like that in public, we've got a lot to do. But we have the huge power of organizations such as Women First. We have got momentum behind us with organizations like the 30% Club, the 2% Club, the Women's Business Forum. We have great support from male colleagues in government and in business. But it really is down to us to take advantage of this moment and really drive forward on this agenda. I would love one day for my goddaughter who's 11, I would love for her to say to me in 10 years' time when she's entering the workplace, God, what was all the fuss about? I could be anything I want. I don't think it's going to happen in that time. I was asked in an interview with the FT recently how long I thought it would take, and I said I think it's probably at least another generation, because we are only in this little sort of blink of time compared to all of that history behind us. But we've got enormous talents and huge energy, and I have thoroughly enjoyed being here with you this afternoon. Very pleased to take questions if any of you have them. Otherwise, enjoy this evening, and thank you very much for listening.